Hello, welcome to Low Season Traveller Insider Guides. This week I'm joined by Bruce Haxton as he talks us through northern Thailand. Bruce owns the Tuk Tuk Club in Chiang Mai, which is based in northern Thailand, and so knows the area exceptionally well. He gives us a really candid response so we can prepare for any eventuality when we visit the country. Sit back and relax as we talk about a more authentic, real, exciting and adventurous Thailand. Hi Bruce, welcome to Low Season Traveller Podcast. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Hi, it's a pleasure. Nice to meet you.
So you're talking from northern Thailand, aren't you? Can you tell me where you are specifically?
Yeah, I'm based in Chiang Mai, so the gateway to the north really for Thailand, the biggest city in the north, and where 99% of travellers heading up to the north of Thailand, it's their first spot.
So let's set the scene. We always like to start our podcast by immersing the listener in where you are. So if you step outside your front door, what can you see, what can you hear, and what can you smell?
But I can go one step better. I'm looking out of my window here, and I can see trees, and more trees. And then in the not so far distance, I can see the beginning of the mountains rolling off into the distance. I can actually see really dark clouds, which is the first time, it'll be the second time it's rained in 5 months.
Wow.
So the smells today are fantastic. That smell of rain coming.
You're really selling it to me here. So can you give us an overview of Chiang Mai, like its USPs and why low season travellers should visit the destination?
I think Chiang Mai is very much the heart and soul of Thailand to many people. We had a couple travelling with us just last week, because we're still running trips during lockdown for people who live and work in Thailand, obviously. And when they finished the trip with us, they said this really felt like Thailand. It was exotic, it was different. Where we take people, there aren't any Starbucks, there are no fast food restaurants. So you really feel that you're on the road, that you're traveling somewhere unique. You've got deep forest, high mountains. For anybody who likes getting out and about and exercising, there's hiking, cycling. People in Chiang Mai don't tend to sit on their backsides and go to shopping malls. It's somewhere for people who like to be out and about exploring.
Would you say that's what makes it different then to southern Thailand, is you're not getting the beaches, but you're getting more of a mountainous terrain?
Yeah, you've got mountains, and you've also got a huge number of different ethnic groups up here, all the different hill tribes. It's very easy to immerse yourself in very different cultures here.
It sounds phenomenal. I mean, going back to local communities and, different ethnicities, are these people really welcoming? Are they happy to have tourists come in and out?
I would say very welcoming. In all busy locations, for example, some of the beach areas, I'm from Britain and I know this from the UK as well, people can get a little bit jaded towards tourists, particularly in high season, where everybody knows tourism is important, but everyone's waiting for the tourists to go home so they can live their life again. The feeling up here in Chiang Mai, particularly once you're in the mountains, is that people are really pleased to see you, that you get a very natural sort of interaction with people rather than a forced one. And our experience, I should say, our travellers' experience, because that's the best way for me to judge it, is always wow, how happy people were to share food with them, to sort of pass the time of day with them, to ask them questions about things rather than them just asking about their lives.
Yeah, that's lovely.
So I found that very positive. And perhaps a great example is I cycled the Mae Hong Son Loop just before Christmas on my own, and I have never, ever been met with so much warmth everywhere I was.
So really hospitable.
Yeah, incredibly so. Yeah.
So you say how, people, and it's true, people get jaded in the high seasons. People ask a lot of communities and cultures at that time. So what are the low season months in Chiang Mai?
I would say probably from May through to October. So the end of the hot season, which is May, all the way through the rainy season are traditionally the low season. But to be honest, the group of people I work with, my team, we always say to each other, the rainy season is our favourite season. Now, that's not because we're quiet and we're lazy. It's because everything looks so great. Everything's green. The rice is growing. The waterfalls are full. The rivers are full. It's just beautiful. And you have the odd rainstorm. That's not an issue. You can shelter in a little mountain coffee shop and enjoy some really great coffee and look at an amazing storm. And an hour later, everything clears up and you're back on the road doing what you were doing. It's wonderful.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, you've answered my next question. I was going to ask, what are the, you are going into the rainy seasons, but what are the benefits and the disadvantages of that? I suppose you've answered the advantages, and it sounds you've used the term before, a period of rejuvenation. And I thought that was really beautiful, actually. I hadn't quite considered it like that, because water does bring life, doesn't it? And
Yeah, it
like you
does.
said, you can smell, the air smells different, the trees react differently. You said that there's a storm coming over now and that the trees are scared. You can tell things
Yeah.
are kind of bracing.
I mean, I've seen some footage of only 50 miles away from where I am of the storm coming through, and there were a lot of trees down and stuff. This time of year, we get 1 or 2 summer storms, and they're quite spectacular. The rainy season often is less brutal. You might get some really big storms, particularly late October, which is, if someone said I've only got 1-2 week period to travel to Thailand, I'd say come the last 2 weeks of October or the last week of October, first week of November, you might get a couple of big storms. And coming from Europe, or particularly say the UK, where we don't really get very exciting weather, those storms are something to write home about. But it's just, everything feels alive. And when you think that we grow a lot of rice up here, the rice is planted up in the hills. They'll be planting from May, and then harvested, depending on exactly where, sort of harvested from October through to November. That's a huge part of life, bringing in a huge amount of money and food for people. So it's quite a special time of year.
Yeah, so people shouldn't be put off by the rain, basically, is what you're saying.
Not at all. Northern Thailand isn't somewhere you come to just sort of sit in the sun and get sunburnt. It's somewhere you come to experience and have adventures and really get to grips with the country.
Well, it seems to be that there are endless advantages, but we like to cover it all on Low Season Traveller so that people know exactly what to expect. So can you think of any disadvantages of travelling to Chiang Mai during the low seasons that people should just be aware of, even if they do make the journey to the country, just something that they should know about?
Do you know, that's really tricky, because I get a bit passionate about Northern Thailand, and I wish more people would come here and spend longer in the north. Disadvantages, you can have periods where you might get a couple of 2 or 3 days where it rains solidly. It's rare, but it can happen. There might be a little bit of disruption to travel. Sometimes there are landslides across the roads, small roads. Then normally the Thai Highways Agency are amazing.
Well, thank you for being so honest. I think it's just really important that people get a full overview, because I think quite often in tourism you're oversold an idea because people are pushing the high season and they're trying to just get you to come, and especially post COVID, where travel's starting to open up again, there's definitely this flurry to be like, get on the next flight, do this, do that, come here, it's going to be amazing. And I think it's important, especially as we're trying to build communities where people really connect with where they're going and they know what to expect and they're respectful and they prepare, and it's not so much to deter people, it's just so that when they come they've got this full expectation and they can be ready for it. So they pack a raincoat.
The toughest time of year is probably March, April. It's hot. Our visitors never really comment on it, but people who live in Chiang Mai for a long time, particularly if you have chest conditions and asthma and things like that, it can be tricky. But having said that, I'm a cyclist and I like riding in the mountains, and I ride every day I can, no matter what time of the year. So and that doesn't put me off. I don't find that it harms me, but I know some people are quite sensitive to it.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to the positives, because I don't want to bring the podcast down, but I myself I like cycling as well. Can you talk, I'm just really interested personally, can you talk us through what it's like cycling in the mountains?
Do you know what? I've cycled in the Alps, which is every bike rider's dream, isn't it? You've got to cycle up Alpe d'Huez and things like that. The cycling here is better. The condition of the roads is better. The drivers up here, there's a big cycling scene, or a growing cycling scene. And once you're in the mountains, people driving are really considerate towards cyclists. The roads are pretty wide. They're in amazing condition. And we've got climbs. The Doi Intanon climbs 40 kilometers at 5.5%, 6%. Now that's a good climb. With the last 10K, we're all at over 10%. So, we've got proper cycling here. We've got right on our doorstep an early morning coffee ride up Doi Suthep. 10 kilometers at 6% or something, so very nice.
You must
And
be
all
fit
the
as a
way
fiddle.
along, no, I'm just very stubborn, incredibly stubborn. But friends of mine so I'm a Yorkshire boy, and so Yorkshire's a big cycling hub these days, yeah. And a friend of mine who's a big cyclist, the person who got me into riding, he came and he said he cannot believe why people don't flock here in their thousands to ride, because you've got great food, you've got fruit everywhere, it's stunning scenery, some great climbs. It's like if you're into a bit of pain in your thighs, it's the ultimate place to come.
You mentioned fresh fruit and amazing cuisines and stuff. Can you tell us about any local delicacies and drinks that you'd recommend?
Everyone's got their favourites, don't they? I think the first thing that comes to most people's mind in Chiang Mai is khao soi, which is the really famous northern Thai noodle dish with crispy noodles on the top. Absolutely delicious. Northern sausage is really nice. Maybe that's the Yorkshireman in me liking sausage and stuff like that. I don't know.
You can take a man out of Yorkshire, but you can't take Yorkshire out of the man.
You can. Yeah, I'd invite you for dinner, but I probably wouldn't get round to paying for it. Yeah, I'm very Yorkshire in that way. Apologies to any Yorkshire listeners. But then hang lei is a wonderful curry up here. I can't think of a better word to influences from the mountains. And it's not super spicy, but it's just full of flavour. Absolutely.
Yeah. Is it aromatic? That's what I associate with Thai food, really aromatic and fresh.
It's really, and how it's sort of central Thai food. A lot of your classic Thai dishes that people think of, like tom yam and things like that, are quite sharp. Hang lei is not sharp at all. It's just like, it's proper
I can
comfort.
see your mouth watering.
It's proper comfort food. And if you order one dish, you're going to have another 3 before you finish. And that's just an insight into the food. You've got some really great stuff up here, from raw buffalo larp, which is not for everybody, but interesting. One of the things I like a lot about this part of the country is once you're outside of Chiang Mai city, there isn't any watered down food for tourists. And I don't mean that means it's all super spicy. It isn't. What I mean is that people cook for themselves. And if you want, as a visitor, you want to go and try that food, brilliant. But they're not going to put peas in or something like that you might find in a more touristy area.
They're not going to westernize it in any way.
Yes, exactly. So you get the real deal. Drinks wise, that's quite a tricky one, really. There's all the fruit drinks that you get all over Thailand, and of course, no good day adventuring in Thailand is finished without a nice cold beer, whether be a Sing, Chang or Leo is your thing, one of the 3.
Yeah, that's a universal language, isn't it? A nice cold beer at the end of the day. You can't go wrong. And you talked about food being a big thing, and I did some research, and you talked about Songkran as one of the biggest festivals, and I read that there's a lot of street food. Is that something that just takes place during the festival, or is street food a really common thing?
Thailand is famous for its street food, and that's all through the year. Mae Hong Son has a lake in the town, and in the evening the food around the lake is just brilliant. A lot of Thai people don't, particularly in urban areas, don't cook at home really, because you go to the market or go to a stall and eat there, or take it home from there and buy a bag of rice, or you have a rice cooker at home. People are obsessed with food in Thailand, quite rightly.
Yeah,
because it's a big part of life.
I think I would be. From what you've described, I would fully be obsessed, 100%. And sticking with Songkran, that's a really main festival. Can you talk us through that a bit? Because it looks like it's bonkers. It looks like it's great fun.
It is, but we've just heard that with the sort of wild water fights and things that Thailand's famous for at Songkran, they're not going to be allowed to go ahead this year.
Right.
And we missed that last year because of the pandemic. But usually it's mayhem with water everywhere. And then when you move out a little bit, so where I spend a lot of my time, where my business is based, there's a river, really nice river, and people head out to the river and they set up little low bamboo tables just sort of above the river, and food stalls. So people go and sit next to the river all day, eat, drink, swim in the river, have fun. It's a really cool time of year to be here.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Are there any other festivals that take place during the low season that our travellers could get involved in?
Yeah, I mean, I think my favourite festival in Thailand, full stop, is Loi Krathong, which is a lunar. It's usually always in November. It's the full moon in November, and Loi Krathong happens all over the country. but it's combined up here with Yipeng, which is sort of the northern Lanna version of that. So Loy Krathong is where you float away all of your troubles. So you go to a river or a lake or whatever, and you float a krathong. Hopefully you buy one made out of biodegradable things rather than polystyrene. You put a bit of your hair in a coin, you light some incense sticks and a candle, and with a bit of luck, your sins of the past float away with the krathong. Up here, people also set off, I don't know what they're properly called, but people call them Chinese lanterns. You know, I'm guessing
I know what you mean, yeah.
And it's limited where you can do that rightly, because you can cause forest fires and things like that, but it can look spectacular both in Chiang Mai city and in Mae Hong Son as well.
Yeah.
It's a nice, Songkran is quite high tempo and high energy, and there's a lot of alcohol thrown in there. Loy Krathong is just a really nice, gentle, and actually quite romantic festival. You see families and couples and go to the rivers and to the lakes and things.
I mean, I've Googled pictures of it and it looks incredible. And like you said, it is really quite romantic. It looks very idyllic, it looks like something out of a film set, really. It doesn't look real.
No, that's a good way of explaining it. And we love it when we have trips running during Loy Krathong, because the travellers with us are just blown away by just really nice. It's not about commercialism. It's not giving presents. It's just a really nice, gentle celebration. It feels good.
Yeah. And I just suddenly had a thought about if Songkran, if they can't do the water guns and, you know, all the water elements of the festival due to the pandemic, what's going to be happening instead? Do you know?
Well, I mean, the origins of Songkran, the whole water fight stuff is quite a relatively recent invention. So what you'd normally do is you pour cool water over your elders' hands. So you go to your mother and father's house and your grandparents and aunts and uncles, and pour cool water over Buddha images and things like this, because it's the hot season, it's super hot. So that will still happen, and families get together. It's New Year, so it's a little bit like in Europe, families get together to bring in the new year, eat, drink, and people will still have a good time. In fact, in some ways, you know, once the water fights are great, I guess, for up to, you know, people in their teens and 20s get really excited by that. When you're a bit older, going with your family to sit by a river and have great food and spend time with each other, with family and friends, is a really nice way to celebrate.
Yeah, and I think now more than ever people appreciate that so much more, don't they? So it will still be really special for a whole new host of reasons now.
I think it would be good. We didn't really have a Songkran of any description last year. In fact, it was cancelled. But this year, people are allowed to travel to their home provinces. So Bangkok is really quiet over Songkran because everybody who's from outside the city goes home to their hometown.
Yeah.
And so it will be, I think it should be quite a nice celebration this year.
Oh, well, I hope so. So it's really clear that you're incredibly passionate about Northern Thailand. So before we wrap the podcast up, I really want to know what your top 3 experiences would be.
I'm going to be really rude here and say the best experience is a Tuk Tuk Club adventure, but I have to say that I'm incredibly subjective. 2 other things is head out into the mountains, whether you're a walker, whether you're a photographer, whatever, get out into the mountains and stay places outside of the city and experience the magic of sort of mountain rural locations in northern Thailand. And I've changed my third would be to cycle in northern Thailand. It's an incredibly rewarding place to ride a bike, and if you're not into mountains, you can ride along the valley floors. So you know, you don't have to be a pain addict to get the most out of riding bikes.
Oh, that's good.
In northern Thailand.
They do sound fantastic. And finally, as this is Low Season Traveller Insider Guides, as an insider, what would be your one tip for somebody travelling to the country?
When you're planning to come to Thailand, look at how much time you were going to spend in the north and triple it.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot.
Okay. The north, if you spend at least a week in the north of Thailand, you will not regret it, and you will have memories to last a lifetime. Honestly, it's a wonderful, wonderful place to travel.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Bruce. It's been so enlightening, and thank you for being so candid as well with the interview. I really appreciate that.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much to Bruce for coming on today's podcast. If you don't want to go to Northern Thailand after hearing that, I cannot help you. I am so excited to get on the next available flight. If you'd like to look at anything mentioned in today's podcast, please go to our website www.lowseasontraveller.com. You can also find us at Low Season Traveller on Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. And if you're feeling super nice, don't forget to leave a review. Bruce will be joining us again later in the week to talk in more detail about his company, the Tuk Tuk Club. And I tell you, now you know the destination, this will provide the activities. You're not going to want to miss it.